This episode of Uncovered Investigates is brought to you by Cope Notes. Use code UNCOVERED at checkout for 10% off any subscription from Cope Notes. It started with a piece of tape, a strip of duct tape across a door latch. That's it. That's how the most powerful man in the world lost the presidency. It was 2:30 a.m. on June 17th, 1972, when Frank Wills, a 24-year-old night watchman at the Watergate office complex in Washington, D.C., noticed something strange during his rounds. A door had been taped open. So what did he do? He removed the tape and continued on. But then when he came back, it was taped again. He called the police, and within minutes, 5 men were arrested inside the Democratic National Committee's office on the 6th floor. They were wearing suits, latex gloves, and carrying cash, cameras, and audio surveillance equipment. One of them, James McCord, wasn't just any burglar. He was a former CIA officer and, more importantly, the head of security for the committee to re-elect the President of the United States. And just like that, Watergate was born.
Wilshire Unit City, Wilshire Unit 211, GTA just occurred, 3921 Wilshire Boulevard, 3921 Wilshire Boulevard, incident 329, any Wilshire Unit code 2 high.
The official FBI investigation launched within hours. Initial documents from the vaults detail the arrest logs, confiscated equipment, and identification materials. The men, Bernard Barker, Virgilio Gonzalez, Eugenio Martinez, Frank Sturgis, and McCord were connected through a bizarre web of Cuban exile politics, intelligence agencies, and dirty tricks. By June 19th, just 2 days later, the FBI had already linked the break-in to E. Howard Hunt and G. Gordon Liddy, both tied to the White House and Nixon's re-election campaign. The two men weren't just political operatives. They were a part of a covert team nicknamed the Plumbers, a group originally assembled to stop government leaks like the Pentagon Papers. But by 1972, their job had shifted to something far more sinister: political sabotage, blackmail, and wiretaps. Internal FBI memos show concern from the start. Why was a former CIA agent running surveillance operations on the opposition party? Why were there White House names popping up in a simple burglary? What the FBI didn't know yet was that President Nixon himself had been informed of the break-in by June 23rd. And what he did next is what ultimately brought him down. The smoking gun tape, later uncovered by prosecutors, captures Nixon telling H.R. Haldeman, his chief of staff, to instruct the CIA to tell the FBI to stay the hell out of the investigation. In that tape, Nixon says, "Play it tough. That's the way they play it, and we're going to do it that way." And so began a months-long campaign of deception. FBI agents were suddenly facing stone walls. Leads dried up, witnesses clammed up. A memo in the vault dated July 1972 show agents frustrated that subpoenaed financial records from the CRP, or the Committee to Re-elect the President, were missing. Another internal summary from late July confirms what agents feared. Political interference was underway. Wiretaps led to nothing. Evidence was disappearing. But in the fall of '72, cracks began to show. The FBI's number 2 man, Mark Felt, wasn't willing to let it go. Publicly, he followed protocol, but in secret, he became the infamous source known as Deep Throat. By late 1972, reporters Bob Woodward and Carl Bernstein were meeting Felt in the shadowy parking garages, confirming details that the FBI couldn't act on. Felt leaked the fact that 2 of the burglars had received direct payments from the secret slush fund controlled by the Nixon team. FBI Vault Part 37 includes a classified report stating investigative channels were exhausted due to the external obstruction. Public record assistance provided no advancement. Private confirmation obtained via anonymous source or source redacted. That redacted source felt without him, the truth might have never come out. In January 1973, the Watergate burglars stood trial. All but one pleaded guilty. The holdout, James McCord, was convicted on 8 counts. But McCord, angry that the White House promised to protect him and didn't, blew the entire thing open with a single letter to Judge John Sirica. The letter is now a part of the FBI vault, Part 59. And it reads, "There was political pressure to plead guilty and remain silent. Perjury occurred during the trial. Others involved remain at large." That letter kicked off a flood of new subpoenas, interviews, and search warrants. By May 1973, the Senate Watergate Committee began nationally televised hearings. Americans watched as high-level White House staff, including Haldeman, Ehrlichman, and John Dean, testified to widespread abuses of power. Then came the tapes. Thanks to the testimony of Alexander Butterfield, the world learned that Nixon had been secretly recording conversations in the Oval Office since 1971. The FBI was stunned and demanded access. What followed was a year-long battle over those tapes. The FBI vault includes a July 1973 internal document recommending a federal subpoena. That subpoena triggered a fight all the way to the Supreme Court. On August 5th, 1974, the smoking gun tape was finally released. It confirmed Nixon's direct involvement in the cover-up. 3 days later, he resigned. The Watergate scandal wasn't just a break-in. It was a constitutional crisis. A test of whether the rule of law could survive a political power play. The FBI's full 101-part vault record shows every layer of this event, from the clumsy burglars to the paranoid president. We now know that over 69 people were indicted, 48 were found guilty, and that the presidency itself was not above the law. And it all started with tape on a door. Want to see everything involved in the Watergate scandal yourself? Visit vault.fbi.gov/Watergate for full access. Watergate redefined American politics. It reminded us that the systems of accountability matter and that even the most powerful can fall. Next time on Stories from the Vault, we travel to 1993 to a small compound out of Waco, Texas. 76 people would die, and the FBI would find itself at the center of one of the most controversial operations in modern U.S. history. But for now, lock the file, and remember, the truth is rarely redacted forever.